and welcome to Off-Grid Journey. I'm your host, Drew Lamb. I am the owner of Pyramid Pure Foods Aquaponics Farm in Ashland, Oregon, and I am also a co-host on Double Cross Radio with Chuck Horton, David Kirk West, and Colby Olson. Today I am joined by my friend John Cross of Aquaponic Tech. He'll be riding shotgun with me. And our guests are Ben and Marcy Young, the owners of Southern Oregon Survival. SOS opened in 2011 in Grants Pass, Oregon, and provides emergency preparedness and self-sustainable living supplies, as well as instructional classes in all areas of preparedness. Their goal is to inform and educate the public about the importance of being prepared for the unforeseen occurrences that may cause chaos in our lives. Whether you're prepared for a natural or man-made disaster, being prepared is just a smart way to live. You can find it at preppers101.com. Ben and Marcy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
So we all know that the collapse is coming. We just don't know when. The change is timing a huge lifestyle change before it's too late. Many people bugged out for Y2K and then had to put their lives back together when nothing happened. How soon is too soon? Should you transition yourself now and just live a more self-sufficient, unplugged lifestyle? I mean, I have a friend who bought some land up in Montana prior to Y2K. And, I mean, he built a fortress up there. I mean, he just, cabins for other people and this house with built-in Faraday cages. And, I mean, he went all out, completely pulled out, and found out that Y2K was fairly uneventful. I had to do a little bit of programming with some of my systems for a real estate business, but it wasn't devastating. And so I mean, how soon is too soon?
Well, I think any moment is you should get started if you haven't already. I mean, I really think that people should have started years ago because it is a lifestyle. It's not something you just decide to do overnight. You whip out your credit card, you buy all the stuff you need, and then all of a sudden you're prepared. And if nothing happens, then you sell everything you just bought. It doesn't really work that way. It's living a self-sustainable lifestyle. It's not just about emergency preparedness. That's just half of it. It's about knowing how to live off the land. It's about knowing how to grow your own food, how to raise your own animals, how to take care of yourself and not depend on any form of government or anybody else to do it. So it is really a lifestyle. It's not just a choice of doing it one day and then not doing the next day. And maybe there's a threat today, so you can go buy something, but tomorrow the threat is gone, so you really don't need it anymore. That's just kind of a come-and-go attitude, and we look way beyond that.
And for those individuals who have been doing this since Y2K, we look at it as if Y2K was a great dry run. It was a great opportunity to sort of get some things in order. But as Marcy was saying, it is a lifestyle change. And being able to control the food, understanding what you're putting in your body without having to rely on outside sources is such a free feeling. It's really hard to put into words.
Well, what I learned was that you need to be prepared on multiple fronts: physical, mental, spiritual. There, with your equipment that you get, things like water purification systems, for example, you need to figure out how they work, try them out. Sometimes you purchase junky stuff. You have problems with things. I know that I ran after Fukushima. I started running my Big Berkey water filter all the time. And I ran into problems with my replacement elements. They fell apart, and getting replacement filters through them is really difficult. And at least when I wanted to return faulty product, it was. And so, so now I've got a cadence system I'm trying to figure out, and I got another system from Pure Effect water filters, and I've got to hook that up. And so it's not like, it all hits the fan, and then suddenly, because you had your preps in order, everything's easy. Like if you're planning to grow a garden and you've got your survival seeds, you're not going to instantaneously grow a green thumb.
Right.
It takes years, and you do need to use all of the stuff you buy. You do need to try it out and tell that to people all the time. Don't just put it up on the shelf and wait until you need it and find out there's a part missing, or find out that there's something wrong with it, or you forgot to get something that you really, really need, or you just don't know how to use it, and you need to use it quickly and effectively, and you've never used it before. So you do need to try out all the products. It's not just about what you can buy. It's about the skills that you have. It's about knowing what to do quickly in multiple situations and being able to make a decision quickly. And if you've never used your products before and you don't have the skills to go along with it, it's going to take you longer to make a decision. And that can mean life or death.
Yes.
In terms of products, Drew, and we recommend everyone's got to do the research. Don't take our word for it. Everybody's got to do their homework, and that's how they get in the right mindset anyhow, right? Not by just hearing information that someone's kind of spitting out or regurgitating. They have to do their homework, do their own research, and that's really the only way to make an intelligent choice.
Yes, and I found that the best decision is to incorporate preparedness into your daily routine and start doing certain things all the time, like maintaining a garden. That's something that you should do all the time. There are certain crops that you can grow year-round, especially if you have a greenhouse. And, like John and I raise fish and vegetables in our systems. But, these are some lifestyle adaptations. These things, there's skills that have to be developed. It takes time, energy, effort, money, and then you take other things, like self-defense and acquiring firearms and learning how to use them and figuring out what kind of ammo works best for the firearm that you have, and
right.
And even physical preparedness. How far can you walk with your bug out bag on?
Right. Yeah.
I blew my ankle out yesterday just working hard all day, and in the last 2 hours of my workday yesterday were just pure hell, and I feel pretty good today, but I was just imagining, man, if I was, if I had to walk like 10 miles yesterday, I couldn't have pulled it off. It couldn't have happened.
You look at things a little differently. We were putting up a hog fence, and there was some rusty barbed wire out there, and it scratched me. And the first thought that went through my mind is, I've got to be really, really careful. I'm lucky right now where if I need to go and get a tetanus shot, I can go and have that. But there are going to be times when that's not an option. So you have to be very careful when you're out working, and trying to set all this stuff up now is really important to us because it takes a lot when you're doing a garden and you're raising animals. We have a new medicinal garden. We have a garden just for feeding our animals, and all the fencing and everything that goes into putting that up is expensive, it's time-consuming, but it's absolutely necessary. So those projects that people are putting off or thinking, well, I can just do that later, it's going to be very difficult to do that later, especially if we don't have power and you don't have power tools to use, or you just can't go and get the materials that you need. So I would suggest that when people think about if the power were to go out today, what is the first thing that they think of that they wish they would have accomplished? And it could be a relationship with somebody, with a family member they wish they would have called, or it could be a project they wish they would have fixed, or it could be water that they wish they would have stored, or food they wish they would have bought, or skill they wish they would have, honed up on. But what's that first thought? And just go and accomplish that and get it done. And if people do that every day, they think about these little things that they may not have the opportunity to do in the future, but they can do it right now, and just do it.
Yes. Now, let's talk about operational security for a moment. I've been wondering whether or not it's useful to join a prepper group. It seems like it would be natural to want to network with others and have a support group, but you can also blow your OPSEC as well.
Right.
It can go both ways, definitely.
Yeah, trust is the biggest issue, Drew, when grouping up with any individuals who are frankly strangers, right?
Yeah.
And that takes time to develop. The camaraderie amongst the group. There's a lot of elements. You have women and children, and just the dynamics of relationships are quite tricky, especially with strangers, and people don't always show their cards right away. And information is, it has to be kept tight to the collar a little bit, and that is a very good question. And all I can say, in my opinion, is it takes time to develop. It takes time to develop those relationships. But if you are choosing to group up with individuals who are like-minded, you just keep things sort of close to the cuff, and you don't reveal too much. You kind of feel everybody out, and follow your gut, and you have to make intelligent decisions. People you're going to group up with aren't necessarily going to be guys that you want to go out and have a beer with. People that you group up with may not be, the guys you want to go dirt biking with or fishing with. They're going to be individuals who are very well educated in the field, whether they're a doctor or it could be a medic of some kind, and you have to make intelligent decisions when grouping up with individuals. You have to have an idea of who do you want involved in this group, and what skills do they bring to the table, and then go a little bit deeper. What baggage comes with that, So it just takes time, Drew. It takes a lot of time. Yeah.
Should you include your neighbors in your preparedness plan? I mean, if things go wrong, you're going to be dealing with your neighbors one way or the other.
Without a doubt, Drew. And any opportunity you get to sort of network with the neighborhood, the guy down the street, the guy next door, you want to develop those relationships now. And we've grown accustomed to, hey, putting up fences, and this is my property, and you stay over there, and we're not going to talk unless we really need something. And we're sort of programmed like that now, and we really have to break that mold and get out of that and get back into just networking with our neighbors and having a barbecue, having a glass of iced tea or something, and just through casual conversation, put your foot in the door talking about a little emergency preparedness. It's the hardest thing to do, to break ice, with strangers.
I think one thing that people do sometimes is they'll go in a little bit too strong. They'll go in with the doomsday scenarios, or they kind of scare people right off the bat, and then the walls go up, and they don't want to talk about it anymore. So you have to kind of do a little dance and tiptoe around the subject a little bit to try to bring people in, to try to get them to open up. It's not like you're trying to find out, what they're storing and what they're prepping, because, that's really not your concern. If everybody does their own preparedness, they don't need to worry about what their neighbor is doing, because they don't need to take their neighbor's stuff. That's not what it's about. But building those alliances is important. Now, you've got to be careful at the same time, because if your neighbor doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but you reveal too much, then they're going to have a resource to go to when something does happen. So you do have to be careful there about how much you reveal. Now, you can look at it as just a neighborhood watch group. You could, just call it, you just want to get together and meet the neighbors, have a barbecue and stuff like that. Just build the alliances, build the friendships, and let it grow from there.
Yeah, fortunately, I have several neighbors that have their own gardens, and it's pretty obvious that I have one as well, and I have a greenhouse. But my neighbors come from, just all walks of life and political affiliations, and I think most of them are totally asleep for the most part. When campaign season rolls around, you see the Obama signs pop up and the Romney signs pop up, and you're like,
well, that's good to know which ones do that too.
yeah. And so, I mean, they're just like, they're watching mainstream media, and really don't quite understand the way that the world's working and the real threats that are out there. But if they're growing a garden, it's a good start.
Yeah, and that's, there's good potential there. And if you can develop those relationships now, regardless of what their political beliefs are, right, then you're going to have an opportunity, potentially anyway, to do some bartering down the road. You have some fish, you're doing some aquaponics, and you want to, work out a little bartering system with the guy down the street who's got some potatoes and corn and what have you. You want to nurture that, But baby steps, Drew. That's the thing. Marcy nailed it. You can turn someone off so quickly by revealing too much, and just having a casual neighborhood conversation and talking about farming or anything of that nature. Anything that you guys have in common is a great start. It's good that you live in an area where you have some agriculture going on. A majority of these individuals, who want to do this, they're in city limits. They're door to door next to somebody, and they don't have the capabilities to do that. So their intention is just to grab their gun and go to the hills. But when we had a little conversation earlier about bugging in, and that's I think that's a better plan initially.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. You've got to make some choices, to bug in or to bug out. And friends often ask me, so, when it hits the fan, where are you going to go? Where's your bug out location? And I'm going, well, I've got multiple plans depending upon the scenario and what the threat is. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if there's a volcano erupting in the Cascades, I'm not heading up to the mountains in the Cascades, even though I live on the flank of the Western Cascades. I'm not going to be heading into the mountains, If Mount McLaughlin's blowing or something like that, I'm going to either stay put and stay inside, if ash is coming down, or I'll try to head away from it, But people seem to have, some strategy, I'm going to go, I'll head out to my favorite campsite. Well, everybody and his brother is going to be out there.
That's right.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I'll just go out and find a cave or a mine or out on BLM, and we often ask, well, how are you going to build a shelter? Are you going to take your kids with you out there? What are you going to do if it's in the middle of winter?
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to defend your shelter? And what are you going to do for security if you're the only one? Are you going to stay up 24 hours a day? What if you're cooking your food and people smell the food and they see the smoke from your fire?
Well, Drew, you nailed it, though. It's it always depends on the situation. Look, if I live in town, if I was the kind of guy that had my family and we lived in town, I don't have much other option than to get out and do what we just discussed. And which is one of the reasons why we don't live in town. But the individuals who come up with these unrealistic plans, in our view, they just haven't put a lot of thought into it, and
or their options are limited,
right.
I think. So
right.
Building alliances with others and having a piece of land where you can group up with others is your best option. But you have to work on that now. You can't wait until later because of that trust issue. So it does take time.
Yeah, because we're not, you're not bugging out. We are not bugging out unless it's bad, right? It's got to be really bad,
right?
Because our intention is to live a sustainable lifestyle, to grow our own food, to raise our own animals, to have the skills that we need to live a lifestyle that isn't really in need of assistance. I'm not saying we're not going to need assistance, and that's Marcy mentioned having other individuals, because truth of the matter is there's no way I can protect our assets here alone. We need help, and that's why the groups are a good idea if you get the right people involved. But we have experience with bringing the wrong people in too, and it being interesting to say the least. So
you need to get to know these people for certain. I met a guy a few months back. I was selling him some ammo for a rifle that I had sold. I didn't need the ammo anymore, so we get together. I can't remember if I was selling to him or if we were trading. Seems like we did a trade. Anyhow, we get to talking and we were discussing food security, and he says to me, "Well, I don't have a food security plan. I'm just going to go and I'm going to raid this warehouse over here. There was a Winco warehouse near where he lives, and he goes, I'm just going to go there and take what I need and
horrible plan.
Take what I need from it. Yeah. Well, basically, he was planning to be a pirate.
Well, he's planning on getting shot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. But there are people like that out there. I have a feeling that there are lots of people out there.
More than we want to admit.
Yes. And then there are the ones that don't know that that's how they're going to behave because they aren't preparing, and then when things get bad, they'll get desperate, and that'll probably happen.
That's when you make the poor decisions because you haven't gone through the scenarios in your head. You haven't worked out plans. You haven't spoken to another person and worked these things out. What would we do if this happened? And some people think that we're, paranoid or we're negative thinkers or because we're thinking this way, we're actually going to cause it to happen. And no, we're not. We know how to look at a scenario. We know how to decide what we would do in that scenario, but then we can back off from that. And we have our normal lives. We have children. We have family. We have friends. We do the barbecues and the birthdays and all of that. We don't live in a preparedness mind 24 hours a day.
We're not fear mongers. But the bottom line, Drew, is, we're talking about a state of mind. People have to have their mind right in order to take these steps. Otherwise, you're talking about raiding warehouses. You're talking about robbing, your neighbor. You're talking about doing things that shouldn't be done, okay? But the bottom line is, you mentioned something here a moment ago. We don't know how we're going to act when it goes down, so we're prepping our minds now for when it does. So we're ahead of the curve, okay? Our minds are already there, okay? Even though we still have normal lives, we go and hang out, we go to the movies, we hang out with friends, and we do this and that. We as Marcy said, we're able to sort of turn that off and have our normal lives, but we can read the writing on the wall. And we're getting ready for it.
Mm-hmm. I think that many people don't know how to react to threatening situations. I know when Fukushima started melting down, I was paying close attention to the earthquake and the tsunami. I have family in Hawaii, and I was in contact with them. I was trying to make sure my cousin was safe and that he wanted to stick around to see the tidal wave, and I was encouraging him to head to high land. I said, get up on a hill. You're on an island and there's mountains. Get up as high as you can, and don't stick around to see what it's going to look like. Do it from high ground if you're. But really weird audio feedback there.
Yeah, we're losing some of the audio, Drew.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you
it goes
now.
in and out a little bit. But
Okay, yeah, it's kind of strange.
all right now.
Yeah, I think it's the way that we must have some kind of a delay or something. It sounds like it's delaying the audio packets coming through. But when I saw that Fukushima was going to melt down, it didn't take me very much time to put two and two together and go, oh yeah, or remember those fire bombs that were floated in the jet stream by the Japanese during World War II, and some of them landed in Southern Oregon. Some of them landed in Medford. where I live, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get fallout from this. So I just, I took precautions. I had 6 millimeter plastic and duct tape, and I sealed up my windows, and I turned off the heating and air conditioning system, and I got a Geiger counter and started monitoring things. It just seemed like a reasonable precaution. And sure enough, we got insanely high readings. One night the readings got over 350 CPMs during a rainstorm. And we had to get a cow carried to my family's ranch that night, and a ranch hand got sick that morning, and the soil up there is radioactive now, and so anyways, I mean, stuff happens, and get stuck in like a normalcy bias. You can't. People often think that, well, because something has never happened, that it can't ever happen.
Right. Yeah. They haven't lived through the experience of anything horrible yet, so they can't imagine it in their minds that it would take place. Sure. And that's really what you need to do. You need to be able to go there so you can prep for it, but you come back. It's not like you need to live in it every day. Right. And when you've been doing it long enough, that fear goes away because it's replaced by it's knowledge, it's motivation, it's love. We love our life. We love our kids. We love our community. And that's why we want to prepare, because we want to protect our family and our community as much as we can. But we don't do it out of fear. We don't do it out of hate. We don't do it out of any of those negative feelings. And it gives us a sense of accomplishment every time we do something.
You mentioned, Drew, that you got yourself a Geiger counter and you started monitoring, taking readings and so on. That's brilliant. That's absolutely. I wish every American was doing that. Who had this mindset, because we're not getting real information from the media. They're not going to report what's really going on. It would incite a panic.
No, it's not going to happen. Those government agencies aren't there to protect you. They're there to conceal the activities of the corporations.
Exactly.
And we saw that. We saw that with this event. We're still seeing it, between the EPA and the NRC. It's just disinformation.
Right.
So you have to take responsibility for yourself. I didn't realize this, but I had learned a lot about preppers. And I don't think they would have called themselves preppers. It's just a lifestyle. They lived in suburban East Medford in a nice house with a pool in the backyard, but the garage was always stocked with everything you could ever possibly need. The pantry was always just food and smoked meat. And my grandpa would hunt and fish and just hobbies, the things that he did for fun, but it was just part of the lifestyle. And there was, they always had abundance, but the rationing that went on during World War II. He showed me these little coupons that they had that they'd use to get, gas and sugar and things, because everything was being rationed. So they actually lived through that. This is happened in recent memory, and they lived differently because of that. They didn't want to be in that kind of a situation again, where they had to suffer shortages and wait lines and deal with rationing.
And those are great stories to hear. I think everybody should talk to their grandparents and their elders and ask them, what situations did you go through and how did you make it through? What kind of things did you have to do? Those are the best stories that you can hear and learn from.
Yeah, I have a quick one for you. I have a relative who lived through the Dust Bowl, and if you didn't prepare by January, you either moved or you were dead.
Yes, my part of my family were Dust Bowl refugees, and my other grandmother had told me stories about the dust storms and when they left, and one of my great uncles was actually lost in one of the storms.
Oh, wow.
The family was delayed on leaving because my great grandfather had to try to find him, and he suffered all sorts of respiratory problems after that, and he died around 59 or 60. But he had a lot of health problems, and my grandmother did too. She had a lot of respiratory problems, which I think were due to exposure to the massive amounts of dust during that time. But they came over to the West Coast and ended up in Southern Oregon, and it was because of that.
Yeah, I mean it's a way of life, and it's out of necessity. The media now has done a wonderful job of tagging this term prepper, and they belittled the idea with some of these ridiculous shows on television. The fact that the government has come out and said, hey, if you have X amount of food, you're considered a potential domestic terrorist. I mean, they're just belittling the whole. I don't want to call it a prepper movement. It's a sustainable living movement, is what it is.
Right, true, and you're a threat to the system. You're not a threat to anybody else. The system wants you to be dependent upon it.
That's right.
If things go bad, they want you to think, oh, there's a FEMA camp for me.
Yeah, get in line.
Get on the train, and we'll take care of you.
They don't want you to be independent. So they are terrified of you, but right. You're not a threat to your neighbor. You're a threat to the system.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
They want to raise good, obedient little consumers.
Yes, exactly. But I think it's best to have your preps in order, have more than what you need, be prepared to help your family and your friends and your neighbors. But at the same time, you don't want to be standing there giving away all of your stuff.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to be ambushed either. So you have to be reasonable, and you still have to put yourself and your family first, because right. you need to survive and these desperate situations.
And there's so much stuff to cover. As a let's say if you were a family just starting out getting things in order, there is so much to cover. It is overwhelming. So we suggest that people come up with a plan, with a preparedness plan, and then they can attack one topic at a time. For example, January's, we're going to focus on water purification, water storage, alternative forms of water purification, how to transport water to and from, and then come February, maybe it's communication. So then in February, you come up with a comm plan, you come up with a neighborhood comm plan, and you can expand, from there. So it's much easier to take smaller bites than to eat the whole thing at once, and that's where we lose a lot of people. That's where people, they come in for the right reasons, but they go about it the wrong way. When they want to throw money at it, like Marcy said earlier, and buy the things they need without really learning about them and getting knowledgeable in that area. But that emergency plan is crucial for any family, whether you're a beginner, prepper, I'll call you, or if you're someone who's been doing it a while, because we constantly go back to our plan and we find things that we can make better. We find things that maybe we need to replace or replenish. So an emergency plan is the first place you should start when getting things in order.
And we have a template on our website where people can go and they can download this emergency preparedness plan, and they can either open it in Microsoft Word and make changes to it, or they can just print it up as a PDF form. It's meant to be a template that is meant to be changed. It's not written in stone. It's just most people don't know where to begin, so this gives them an idea of where they can start. But this plan should be ever-changing. You should be writing in pencil so that you can make a lot of changes to it. But just to give you an idea of how many topics we have in this plan, we have food, water, communications, power, medical, hygiene and sanitation, security, shelter, transportation, skills, self-sustainability, community, and then the last one is the documents and resources. So there's actually a lot of different areas that people do need to work on, and they may not think about all those until they go through this plan.
Yes, and you need to go through and check and test things periodically. Like a couple of months ago, I grabbed a few of my radios, and I needed them for the Jefferson Republic Liberty concert that we were putting on with Jordan Page down in Wairika, and I needed communication, and so Gary Lake and I could organize things, and I realized I have 4 radios, and 2 of them just wouldn't function at all.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them. They were midway, and they just wouldn't. One of them would work with my CB, but it wouldn't work with the other radio, and so that's a huge problem. And these are radios that we usually kept in our vehicles. My wife would keep one in her vehicle, and I'd keep one in mine. Plus, I have my CB, and then I noticed the other day that my little handheld ham radio had lost its charge, and I needed to throw it on the charger. I usually have that on my bug out bag, and I hadn't checked it in, I don't know, probably a couple months to see if it was charged or not, and so I had to throw that on the charger. And
I did the same thing yesterday. I taught a communications class yesterday, and I went through I have a separate bag, which is just a camera bag that I keep my ham radio in. And I realized I didn't have my charging cable in that bag. And I looked at the batteries. I have spare batteries for my ham radio, so I just put on a spare battery so it had full charge. But I couldn't believe I did not have my charging cable in there. And that was a huge, huge mistake to make. But, yeah, you do have to go through your packs, because once in a while you will take something out, and it'll just get misplaced. Or maybe somebody else will go through it and take something out, and you didn't know anything about it.
Well, I think the bottom line is that it's better to find out now what doesn't work than later.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to get more batteries or get the proper radio in place. And, you don't want to figure this stuff out later. You want to figure this stuff out now.
Yeah, and there's things, too, like we'll go through the pantry and we'll have canned food that's approaching an expiration date, and so, okay, well, we got to eat this stuff up, so we're going to eat canned green beans all week. But if you stay on top of it, it's not tedious. It's not like you're eating a whole bunch of the same thing over. You just go, well, you need to routinely be turning over your stock and replenishing it.
Yeah, and make sure you don't keep all your stuff in the same place. Have separate locations, and I just rotated through the food last week, and I realized how much soup we have, and we've been having 100-degree weather for the past few weeks, and the last, I don't want to think about eating soup right now, but we have so much soup that is nearing its expiration, so let's do something about that.
Yes, and sometimes I forget that I have things. And so I'll go through my stuff, and periodically I'll empty out bug out bags, and I have a couple different ones. I've got one that's just a tool bag that I keep in my truck with a bunch of things that I would like to have with me in case of some sort of an accident or problem on the road. And then I've got some others that are well, they're backpacks that were made by Infidel, and they've got a Class 3 plate in them, and tons of pockets, and a computer pouch, and all kinds of just great bells and whistles. But I'll pack things into things that I might need over the course of my day, plus things that, if I had to walk home, if I work in one city and live in another, if I had to walk home, if I needed to get home, I'd have enough stuff that I could be out overnight if I had to, or longer than that. And I like to, of course, have something to eat in there, and multi-tools and first aid equipment, and full. Oh, my dog's barking. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sounds like a big dog.
It's important to keep, if you want to call it a bug out bag, emergency pack, or bug in bag, or bug home bag, or whatever you want to call it, but just have one in your car. at all times, and then have one at your house too, so that if you do have to get out of your house quickly, you can take the stuff and get out. Whether that's a bag or a plastic tote or, whatever it is, you just need to be able to grab it and get out quickly. And if you have like an RV or something where you can store a month or two worth of supplies, it's a good idea to keep that always stored in your RV or your trailer so you can just pick that up and go.
Multiple bags is a wonderful idea, Drew. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that, because most people, they don't think that far ahead. You have a bag in your vehicle. I call it your get home bag. Okay, it's probably more than likely going to have some security items in there. It's going to have a little bit of food. Obviously, you're going to have a first aid kit, some emergency supplies if you're a first responder to an accident. And then at home, you got a completely different bag. It's like Marcy said, and for us, it's seasonal, because I tell you what, I'm not keeping the same stuff in my bag in the summertime as I do in the wintertime. Obviously, just because of the elements. So constantly going through, that bag a couple times a year, you'll find that, hey, maybe I need to replace this particular multi-tool, or I found a better one. Okay, and redundancy is good. One is none.
I've decided to start collecting multi-tools. So I just, I've got different ones, different shapes, different sizes, and with different tools on them, and I scatter them around in my stuff. So I've always got one, like, oh man, I need a multi-tool. Oh, check this pocket. Oh, there's one. And sometimes I forget about them. I put on one of my jackets a few weeks ago, and I felt something heavy in one of the pockets. I'm like, what the heck is in here? Oh, it was one of my Leatherman. It was a multi-tool. I was like, I was looking for that one. And it is handy having more than one. I was at the range with my friend Todd, and he was having a malfunction with his Mini 14, and I needed one tool from 3 different multi-tools to fix his problem. But we had all the tools with us. That's what was amazing. We actually had 3 multi-tools with us. They come in different shapes and sizes and with different things. I've got, my favorite one is just a little Leatherman that I got for $15 that I keep on my keychain. It's just a little tiny thing. It just has a few things on it, but I use it almost daily. And I'll probably wear it out pretty quickly. I use it so much.
Well, it's good to try it out and see how long it lasts.
Yeah, and another thing that I've done, and this is pretty extreme, but I call it my bug out box, and I have it's a travel trailer, and I mean, it's for recreation, but it's also, if my wife and I have to get the hell out of Dodge, I hook up and we could go, and if we need to head up to one of our family's retreats, bam, we're all good to go without a lot of preparation. But you do have to there's things that you have to pay attention to, with maintaining that sort of thing, to make sure, that your water lines don't freeze in the winter, and you've got enough propane, and the batteries are good, and you've got spare circuit breakers on your inverter and all that system, the electronic system.
Backup parts.
Yeah, spare parts and things, but it makes me feel good having that,
Sure.
Having that, and knowing that I've got a pretty comfortable home on wheels.
It'll make you feel even better, Drew, when you go and test it. Okay, because we were on the topic of bug out bags real quick. I'm just gonna take one step back. A lot of people put bags together, or they'll have this bug out plan in place, and then they won't test it. They won't go out and use that bag. Hey, is it comfortable to carry around a 60-pound bag?
Yeah.
If you have to hike 5 miles, do you have the tools you need? Do you have the proper shelter? Have you tested that kit? And so we frequently go out and we'll do overnights with our packs and test these things out. And we'll take groups so people can figure it out. We can compare bags and compare, toys, so to speak, and make adjustments if needed. And it's no different than if your plan is to bug out in a trailer, or you have a multiple vehicle setup. Then you gotta test your route, you gotta test your material, and lots of lists.
Right. Yeah. Checklists.
That's it.
Things you need. and things that you need to check and things you need to do.
Yeah.
Well, having a calendar in your preparedness plan is really helpful because you can, mark things on the calendar, like, rotate food on this certain day or check your bug out bag on this certain day. And you can do it if you have a family, if you have kids or a group, you can do that together. We do suggest that if you have kids that you don't isolate them in this, that you include them so that they don't feel scared and they feel like they're part of the solution.
Yeah, here's a quick example, Drew. When we first started this off, the first step we took, we just shut the power off. We shut the power off for X amount of time, and we had a list of pencil and paper and a couple candles and a flashlight, and we said, okay, we're going to live for X amount of hours here with no power. And what would make our life a little bit easier? So then that's when the notes started coming in. And, next time we did it, we had more candles or we had more flashlights or we had a different method of preparing food that was a little smarter without using up more resources. So, if you're a beginner out there, which I'm not assuming anyone listening to this is, but I can't emphasize how crucial taking notes really is.
Yes. When I lived up north, I lived in Portland and I lived in Seattle for a while. And in both of those cities, I experienced periods of time where we didn't have power for many days. I think the worst was in Seattle, and it was in the late 90s. We didn't have electricity after a snowstorm for 5 days, and then we had flooding, and it was completely miserable. It was freezing cold, and the shelves were just bare in all the grocery stores. You couldn't get anything. It was hard to get around anyway, between the snow and the flooding. And, and I was pretty ill prepared. Fortunately, my grandmother had sent me a bunch of canned food for Christmas. Yes. So, and also, fortunately, my wife and I are avid snowboarders, so we have lots of cold weather gear. And I just pretty much lived in my snowboard gear for a week to stay warm. And so, I mean, we managed. It's not like we were out in the wilderness, but it was very, it was inconvenient. It was uncomfortable. Fortunately, we still had running water.
You were lucky.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. But
how crucial was that good gear, right?
Yeah, right. It was.
I spent a lot of time in the mountain as well, and I know how crucial good gear is.
Absolutely. I don't skimp when it comes to like cold weather, jackets, for example. You could go like where we're at, you can go to Rogue Ski Shop and they have piles and piles of gear. Those guys have been in business for decades, and like ski gear, for example, is just like a total high fashion, trendy type of a thing. And so last year's model is obsolete, and you could go in there and get really, really good deals for cheap. You could get like a $350 coat for $50 if or $75 if you go in there at the right time of year, and you get some really, really good technical gear. It's got all the pockets and zippers and hoods and things, and of course you want to be able to layer. It's funny we're talking about this when we've had triple-digit heat, but you don't necessarily want some big bulky thing. You want several different pieces that you can layer and adjust. Especially if you're on foot and you're hiking, you're going to get hot and sweaty, and then you're going to get freezing cold. And so it's important. Yeah, it's very important to keep your body dry. Just for a moment, I wanted to just shout out to our listeners in the chat. 17 Meat Dog, Behind the Woodshed. Hal, how you doing? I'll be listening to your show today. Bipolar Bear 57, Crawdad Miami, Dan B. Cooper, I Am Lone Frog, Jax, JJ, Joe, Jules, Miner Dave, Lady Pitbull, Miss C. Gypsy, and Vincent. Vincent, I really appreciate your sharing the link to the show around Facebook and promoting us. It's always greatly appreciated. And so we've got a few minutes left still. One thing that I wanted to get into with you guys is skill sets. What kind of skills do you need to develop to be prepared to be able to live a self-sufficient lifestyle? What are the most important skills to have?
Well, I think the first thing you need to realize is that you cannot possibly do it all. And if you're going to try to get every skill out there and learn it well enough to be really good at it, it's going to be physically and mentally impossible. So you have to know what you can do. You have to know what your limits are, and you have to be willing to let go what you just cannot grasp, and hopefully bring somebody else in that can provide that skill. But knowing that, having good medical skills, at least knowing CPR and how to suture is a really good skill to have. How to garden and save the seeds, how to know what types of seeds to use and save them and replant them the following year, how to process and preserve your food, hunting, fishing, gathering, raising animals and breeding animals, butchering. There's so many different skills. You basically have to understand that if society were to not have all the conveniences that it has, if you didn't have the power, if you didn't have the ease of just going to the hardware store, going to the grocery store, or getting online and going to Amazon and buying something, what would you do? And make a list of the skills that you would need. How to purify water, how to collect water. Maybe communications is really important. You get a ham radio license and know how to use a ham radio. Not only that, but how to communicate with people. Not just how to use a radio, but how to really communicate, how to diffuse a bad situation that may be coming up. Knowing another language is important, especially if you can see who's your most dangerous threat, and you would want to know what they're saying. So learning to speak another language, or meeting somebody who does know another language. Alternative methods of power. How to use hydro, wind power, solar power, hygiene, sanitation.
I think as far as a sustainable lifestyle, anyone can start with a simple garden. Anyone can start with planting some tomatoes, planting some lettuce, and it tends to grow from there. All these things that Marcy mentioned, are definitely high on the priority list. You also have security. Is another issue that you have to be familiar with, because if it's a potential grid down scenario, or there's some form of civil unrest, you have to worry about security on your property, especially if you're raising livestock like we are. Then you have to be concerned with even your neighbor coming over and taking some food that doesn't belong to him. And that's why developing those relationships
happens now. That even happens now.
You're right. It does. So personal defense, home defense, obviously there's some tactical things that need to be managed in terms of firearms, and making sure that those are kept in order, as well as ammunition and everything stored properly, marksmanship, etc. Training, you have to get yourself trained, especially if you're dealing with some form of firearm. And I don't mean just go to the range and shoot a target, okay? Because targets don't move a whole lot, and they sure don't shoot back. But you have to get used to moving and shooting and reloading, developing those muscle memories more so than sitting in a chair and aiming at a target. So,
and also trying to do it while fatigued.
That's right. Yeah. Elevate your heart rate, or there's some real dynamic drills that you can do.
Run and do 100 push-ups, and then try to shoot straight.
Yeah. Hey, bury your head in your hands in a cooler full of ice, and try to reload your mag. There's companies out there that are training individuals to use firearms effectively in stressful situations. Some of them we've we've had some experience with and worked with a little bit. So we can go on and on about home defense and personal defense, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, it's just that's a big part of it.
Yes, yeah, we'll need to have you guys back on to get into some of this other stuff. I wanted to tell everybody too, if you got, I need to get the affiliate links up on Off Grid Journeys page. But if you go to doublecrossradio.com, I've got some affiliate links on there for Pure Effect water filters and Damian Ross's self-defense company, and I'm an affiliate for both those, and I train with the self-defense company's hand-to-hand combat systems. They're pretty effective and good exercise. And would you guys plug your websites?
Yes, you can find our website at preppers101.com. And if you go to the homepage, that's where you can find links. You can connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. We have a link to our blog there. That's where you'll find all the articles and do-it-yourself type videos, and that's where most of the information is. Now, we don't sell anything online right now. We like to keep the supplies for the local customers. We are currently building a website where we will be bringing it online in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But you can get a lot of information. We also do classes every month that are free on the third Saturday of the month, and if you go on the calendar of events on our website, you can find information about those classes too.
So do you guys have a retail store in Grants Pass?
We do. We have a retail store. It's 914A Southwest 6th Street in Grants Pass. We're directly across the street from Mox Ford. So if you need to come in and talk to us, I don't care if you're in there all day and all you do is talk. That's why we're there. We're not there to push anything on you that you don't need. We're actually there to help you and save you money and just lead you in the right direction.
The bottom line, Drew, is that the more individuals who have that mindset, the more people are prepared, the better off all the